Dr. Hamou Amirouche, a former Algerian freedom fighter and author, was only 17 years old during the outbreak of the war on November 1, 1954, and his father's imprisonment 2 days later. But his resentment for the French occupation was long overdue. In fact, he recalls a childhood memory of his father being savagely beaten by French troops because he was an Algerian nationalist, and they had discovered a rifle in their garden, which he had prepared for an insurrection in 1945. 7-year-old Hamou, his mother, and his older brother were forced to watch.
I lived my childhood with a burning hatred of the French. So as soon as the revolution started, I joined the armed struggle.
The occupation dates back to 1830 when French troops first stormed Algerian territory. After much exploitation of resources, destruction of land, and genocide of the people, the final and most successful attempt of resistance finally took place on November 1, 1954. Bright and early that morning, Algerian freedom fighters organized by the Front de Libération Nationale, FLN, began a series of organized attacks against their French occupiers. 7 years and millions of lives later, Algerian liberation was finally attained on July 5, 1962. "18-year-old Hamou, fed up with the unjust treatment of his father and living memory of the beating, joined the armed struggle. After contacting the rebel leader with the intention of joining the guerrilla forces, he almost immediately regretted it because he was subjected to a test which he described as
Too horrible for a teenager.
Hamou relates in his novel, Memoirs of a Mujahid, that he was ordered to execute a person who was sentenced to death. It could be a French officer, a policeman, a traitor, a member of our family, even your own father if the organization sentences him to death. The guerrilla chief stopped when he saw me freeze and then added, "You're young and you can decline." Utterly shaken in my resolve, I remember that I literally choked up when I answered,
I'm not young, and I accept.
Hamou narrated to me that he thankfully escaped the test by what he referred to as the happiest moment in his life. He thought he would have to prove his loyalty to the guerrilla rebels, but little did he know that his loyalty was rested upon something much greater. While waiting for orders of the execution, Hamou wrote an overly ambitious letter to Colonel Amirouche Aït Hamouda, one of the most renowned Algerian national heroes and greatest threat to the French. Hamou never expected that letter to reach Colonel Amirouche, let alone acknowledge it. He later learned that Colonel Amirouche initially took interest in the letter due to his similarity in their names, despite the fact that they are not actually related, an event of pure luck. He writes, "One night on patrol, we had barely left the village when a harsh voice suddenly broke the silence of the night. 'Stop!' I was startled when the leader asked, 'Is there a student here named Amirouche?' I replied that I was that student. 'You wrote me a letter,' he said. I was speechless, not knowing whom I was addressing. I stammered, 'I wrote several letters, including one to the great Amirouche. Only God is great.' Abruptly, he cut me off before continuing with an amused smile. 'I am Amirouche.'" Hamou goes on to describe his encounter with the legend himself. "I could conceal neither my surprise nor a tremor of emotion. Was I dreaming? Colonel Amirouche had often been described to me by the guerrillas passing through the village, and I had read many articles on the colonial press about the bloodthirsty Amirouche. The next day, the colonel handed Hamou a briefcase stuffed with money and secret documents, ordered Hamou to take good care of it, and took him under his wing.
That's how I escaped that terrible test of shooting in cold blood somebody appointed to me. And here I was, a rebel serving under the orders of the great Amirouche.
Life under the service and companionship of Colonel Amirouche wasn't an easy one. Colonel Amirouche was wanted by the French army, who mobilized incredible means to try to capture him. No other colonel incited such deployment in what was called search and destroy operations aimed at capturing and killing Colonel Amirouche. Hamou related one of these operations that took place in 1958 when they were subjected to dreadful bombardment, blowing up rocks and human beings.
a small piece of wood hit me on the head. Small wound, it was not serious. And I was not scared by the bombardment. I was scared by the napalm, barrels of napalm, which were released by the B-26s, warplanes. When he was finally killed in battle, the French media reported that it's not enough to kill Colonel Amirouche. We have to kill his legend.
Colonel Amirouche, a legendary hero, is still remembered to this day. Hamou considers himself incredibly lucky to have been chosen to serve under his leadership. Having been deeply affected by the Algerian struggle for independence, Hamou leaves me with golden advice. Learn your history, learn your heritage.